from NPR. Ukraine says corrupt officials stole $40 million meant to buy arms for the war. This was first reported January 28th, 2024. Well, I got an update for you. This is from Pravda.ua, a Ukrainian newspaper. They write, where are the fortifications? Kharkiv OVA paid millions to fictitious companies, but millions? That's hundreds of millions of hryvnias. That's the Ukrainian currency, possibly stolen. They mention a total of 7 billion hryvnias were spent there, poured by the Kharkiv OVA to the front companies of avatars. It's a poor translation. What they're basically saying is these companies don't exist and were paid out millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. And now the Russian forces are actively advancing. And the New York Times is reporting that a Ukrainian general paints a bleak picture. A CIA official said Ukraine could lose by the end of the year. And so just a moment ago, for those that did not hear it, I was talking about the brave men and women in uniform, the civil service here in this country to the military service. What bothers me the most about the spending of this money is, one, it rips it from the middle class. It takes it from people who are, I see every day in the chat saying, I'm suffering from cancer. I can't pay my rent. I'm living in my car. And this money, which is a drag on our labor in this country, is being given to corrupt officials. For what reason? Why do we have to spend money and send our brave men and women in uniform to foreign countries in military bases we set up all over the world while our border is cracked wide open? We have crime rampant in our streets, and the people who are dedicating their lives to serve the people of this country are being redirected to nonsensical endeavors overseas while the people back home are suffering, and our tax dollars, our buying power, and our resources are stripped away and sent to corrupt officials and fake companies and criminals, outright criminals, in a country most people can't find on a map.
It's true. More new millionaires in Ukraine created over the last year than in any year of their nation's existence.
It was almost like it was about getting the money and not about anything else.
Everyone knew that Ukraine was considered the most corrupt country in Europe, or one of the most corrupt countries in Europe. This was baked into the cake as soon as we started sending them cash payments and the support. I know that there's been some arms that have gone, but there's just been, they've been shoveling dollars into Ukraine like mad. And
there's been
that's
a
what
lot
happens.
of reports saying that we weren't tracking it. We didn't know where the money was going. It was being sent. Like the fact that, it turns out it wasn't ending up where it was supposed to be is exactly the plot line we all could have predicted. It is wild to me, because if you're the American people and you're saying like, hey, my city needs a new bridge. Hey, what's going on with the border? That's not secure at all. Hey, this is an issue that's facing my community. The federal government said to you, we don't care. We'd actually rather just literally throw money away, never to see it turn into anything in Ukraine, than to help you. And that is not a message for a people that is trying to become a strong culture and a strong force in the world.
Well, and I can't remember who said this, but the basic adage was the government needs transparency and the people need freedom. And the point was, it's the goal of a government to protect the freedoms of the people, because that's what we, the people, deserve. And then what we expect in turn from the government is transparency, because they work for us. But what's fascinating is so I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company, and every quarter we go through a quarterly review on our 10Q, and we have auditors look at our financial statements. And if we even misplace $5, it is under the most strict set of review guidance and parameters. Then you do your end of the year actual formal audit where you have to report year-end financial results, and they comb through every single line item because they're auditors. That's their job. The SEC has the right to review those forms and hold companies accountable or their auditors accountable if there's anything fraudulent on those forms. And so this is a very strict process that we spend lots of money on, and time and energy and resources. And we're just a company, that's making our way and growing and advancing every day. But we're not even $1 billion. We're $150 million. What happens when the U.S. government, that is in control of all of our lives and billions of dollars that we can send overseas, misplaces $5 billion of it as it's on the way to deliver arms? And they are under no review. No auditors are banging down their door. The SEC's not calling them. The IRS is not calling them and saying, what are you doing with the U.S. taxpayer dollars that you're misplacing billions of it? They're under no penalty. And so they just feel like the last 10 years has just been an experiment in how much can they get away with.
Right. There was this year during the budget hearings, I think it was the Defense Department was asked, what happened to this several $1 million? And they were like, we don't know.
We don't know.
Haha. Anyways, more please. Like, they're held to a standard which the American people and the American businesses are not held to. If you were to say, like, don't know, they would be like, great, fines. Potential criminal and all kinds of punishments coming your way.
Yep.
But the federal government, all of its agencies, and Ukraine are not held to the standard that we hold American people. We punish American people for things that we turn a blind eye to for other people. That's not America first, and this is not a value that I would support for a government going forward.
Nope. We don't even have $5 billion for a border wall, they said. So they'll misplace $5 billion in Ukraine, but we don't have $5 billion for a border wall here.
Misplaced.
We don't know what happened.
Yeah. It's just gone.
It's a few pennies here or there.
In all seriousness, though, imagine you're like some gutter crust Ukrainian dude living in the borders of the Donbass, and then you hear in the news that the U.S. is giving $100 billion to your country, and then your local government says, we're looking for contractors to build fortifications, and you're like, I have a company. And they're like, how much do you want? 10 million hryvnia, and they're like, here you go. It's like, and then he just runs off. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk about a payday. I'm jealous of that guy.
Well, and I've heard that a lot of the companies actually on the ground that could do the work in Ukraine that are supposed to be receiving the U.S. aid are not actually the ones receiving the money. It's government officials that'll spin up these little shell corps, funnel the money into it that was never real in the first place, not real contractors, and then they flee the country. They head to Monaco and they buy the yacht with the money. So not only is the money being dumped into fruitless endeavors, they're not even real endeavors. Like, it'd be one thing if we were taking our money and funding Sergey, the contractor who's got a business near, the Donbass region that's going to build a new bridge. That'd be one thing. I'd still be against it. But it's a whole nother thing when the money never even gets to that guy. His quality of life's not improving. So while he's being invaded, his quality of life still sucks, and he has no business, even though he's reading the headlines saying the United States is about to fund me. Yay. But then instead, it's the local city official that takes that money that was supposed to go to him and bounces.
Or what if it's not actually local officials or local criminals, but that's the patsy? And the real issue is that international interests and U.S. corrupt officials are funneling it to themselves. I mean, I just like to recall Hunter Biden being on the board of Burisma.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much question about whether or not there's back channels, people getting in the U.S. getting money from this. This is, if it's not getting it directly, then they're getting it through funds going to weapons manufacturers here, and then the weapon manufacturers supporting their candidacy, or some version of that, or something like that. Some other way where the U.S. pays money to a corporation or to Ukraine, and Ukraine buys weapons, and the money gets back to the people that have passed the laws. This is fairly boilerplate corruption.
Right. Surely we wouldn't just be sending billions of dollars to Ukraine and Israel if no one was making money off it at home, right? Like, our politics couldn't be that bad. Corrupt, maybe, but not stupid.
With the Israeli money, at least you see what they're doing with it. With the Ukraine money, you don't see what they're doing with it. They're like you know that they're losing. You know that they're losing thousands of people. Well, I don't know what the numbers are, but you know that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died and a lot of Russians have died, but they're not obviously stopping the Russians. The Russians
they're obviously not dealing with domestic issues. Like, that's my biggest complaint overall. Like, with Ukraine, it's so blatant, but for any country to receive tons and tons of money, it's a prioritization of international conflict over domestic needs. And I just don't think that's something that Americans can really stomach for any longer. We shouldn't have been doing this in the first place. We fund conflicts from every side. We really mess up all kinds of geopolitical landscapes, and to the detriment of people at home.
Yep. It's that classic meme where it's the rockets flying from both directions and it says my tax dollars, somehow also my tax dollars. It's true. You know, what's interesting too about the Israel versus Ukraine debate, when you look at the transparency on where the funding's going, I think part of the reason the United States has been able to dump so much money into Ukraine, carte blanche, without any repercussions or transparency or accountability, is because the international community is sort of, at this point, turned a blind eye. The international community now has placed a ton of scrutiny and accountability on Israel, and regardless of how you feel on that issue, the point is the world is paying a lot more attention to what Israel's doing than what Ukraine's doing. And so I think it's, Biden, you can argue whether or not he's making an about face on Israel now, trying to kind of strip aid and fight his own Democrats in the party because he's trying to appease those Gen Z voters we talked about earlier, or is it because he knows he can't just get away with everything now in Israel because they've got a heavy eye on them from the international angle. I don't know, because Ukraine's been this money laundering pot that nobody's paying attention to, and the world's focusing on Israel. So it doesn't surprise me that Biden's like, let's just keep funneling money to Ukraine and we're not going to worry too much about continuing to fund Israel, because originally Biden was like all in funding Netanyahu, and now he's all of a sudden making kind of an about face, and it's very interesting to see why.
I think that's because of his poll numbers. I think that he would be funding Israel or more pro-Israel if it wasn't for the fact that the young people and
weren't turning against him for it.
Yeah, no, well, but it's not just the young people, and it's the more far left, kind of more vocal people in the Democrat Party that are turning against him for it, because they're the ones that are actually like pro Hamas and stuff.
Yeah, it's wild.
And then as for the Ukraine stuff, I mean, it's the Ukraine stuff is it puts us in a position where it's possible that there could be a nuclear exchange, and even people, some people say it's unlikely, some people don't think it's unlikely, but I don't see the only benefit that you hear from anyone that talks about like geopolitical stuff. The only benefit the U.S. gets out of this is it weakens Russia, right? So Russia spends, you essentially you throw a bunch of Russian people into the meat grinder and get them killed, and they spend a bunch of money and weapons, and that weakens them. So that makes the United States better off. I mean, you can say that, or you can make that argument. I don't think that it's worth the risk, because I don't think that Russia's actually all that much of a geopolitical threat to the United States, and I don't think that using that inflaming tensions with Russia and Ukraine and possibly putting NATO into a position where they get into conflict with Russia is in anyone's interest.
Well, that's what's nuts. You have actual diehard warmongers that genuinely, I don't know if they believe it, but they tell you it like they do, that if Ukraine falls, Putin will invade France. And it's like,
that's clown show.
You can't be serious.
But they've made Russia into this huge monster, right? Like, not to say that Russia is perfect in any way, but it's like, we have to do anything to stop Russia. And I will give you several hysterical scenarios of what could happen. It's like, that's how they were able to say, like, not only do the Ukrainian people need our support, again, loss of life is bad. Like, I understand that aspect of it, the empathy. But on top of that, it's actually the collapse of the world, and World War III is upon us all the time. I think this is the issue that, whereas, in contrast, the Israel-Palestine-Hamas issue, American voters are much more divided on it, and so you're able to hold a level of scrutiny to how we're spending money we weren't. With Ukraine, it was like, you have to do anything to stop Russia at all costs.
The thing is,
don't even ask what Russia is doing.
The thing is, even if Russia takes over Ukraine, right, it's not like Russia's going to go in there and kill all the Ukrainians. Right? If Gaza had their way with Israel, they would kill all the Israelis.
I don't even know how many Ukrainians are actually left.
I mean,
no, but this is true.
I don't care who runs Ukraine. You know what I mean?
Millions have fled. Cities are displaced. The eastern region is seriously damaged from war. And even the people I know from Ukraine they left the country a long time ago. Yeah. And they're posting happy photos from various parts of Europe. So at this point, if Russia were to take the Donbass, I think the big issue for the United States is that the U.S. is trying to control energy in the region. Yep. Russia controlling the Donbass secures their position in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. And then the only other option the U.S. has is to pressure Turkey to cut off Russia's access from the Bosphorus, which they will not do. And so if the U.S. does not win in Ukraine, they cannot push Russia out of the Mediterranean, which is what we're trying. The United States, I say we, but it's the U.S. I'm against it. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.